So we've seen schooling and education severely impacted. We've seen health impacted, and people just generally not able to go about their daily lives and get to work. That has also led to supermarket shelves emptying out because lots of trucks and cars just haven't had safe passage. So there's been a short supply of food as well. But crucially, the tourism sector is going to be impacted as well, certainly in this past week, but possibly beyond that. Tragic news that a British national among the 5 people killed in this past week during the taxi stayaway is going to have some serious repercussions for our tourism sector. He was a 40-year-old doctor, lived in Britain, the name Ka Hao Teo, and he and his family visiting South Africa and took a wrong turn, ended up in Nyanga, and he was shot dead last Thursday. Let's speak now to Enver Duminy, Head of Cape Town Tourism. Enver, thanks so much for joining us. This is just such a tragic story in its own right. But beyond that, it has massive repercussions, I would imagine, for tourism in Cape Town.
Absolutely, Sally. And I think if we go back maybe 2 weeks ago, Cape Town was recognized as the best city in the world and South Africa as the best country in the world by the UK Telegraph. And 2 weeks later, travel advisories being issued by the UK, Netherlands, US, etc. And it's sad to see that, how a strike has turned violent, people losing their lives and also now their livelihoods. And this is definitely going to have a big impact on tourism and, of course, the destination brand that we've worked so hard to build up over the last few years, specifically post-COVID. So, yeah, it is a big blow. But we continue to focus on what we can change as Cape Town Tourism, how we collaborate with local government, and of course, as the industry, how do we look after our employees within the sector?
Yeah, absolutely. How many cancellations are coming through? Have you been able to assess? Are there direct cancellations after what's been happening?
So, Sally, we don't have the final figures yet, but what we are looking at when we've spoken to the industry and our members particularly, they have indicated that there are possible just a few cancellations, nothing significant. I think where we are fortunate, it is our traditional lower season. We've been successful with the hosting of a Netball World Cup this past weekend. And because of the public holiday yesterday, what we found was a lot of people decided to extend their stay at that time. So we're not seeing immediate cancellations. Also, because of the caring nature of the hospitality industry, what they've done is not only take in their own employees to be within the accommodation establishment so that they didn't have to go home and travel back and forth around that risk, but also we've been helping the BPO sector around finding accommodation for the call center operators, etc. And of course, that takes up rooms. So we're not seeing the immediate impact. There are some event organizers that are quite concerned about conferences and events that are going to be happening in the near future. And what we need to do is give them the reassurance that this will pass, that we still remain a safe destination for tourists, for conferencing. We still are world class, and this too shall pass. But it does create nervousness, especially when tourists are victims of crimes. And yeah, it becomes a challenge for us as destination marketing organizations to continue to put kind of forward a positive message around the destination. And we also know the importance of tourism as not only an economic value, but also it's probably the lowest entry point for small businesses to get into the economy, and tourism is that sector.
What kind of conversations are you having with your global partners to reassure them?
So I think the first thing that we're doing is to also be mindful of the fact, and I've actually spoken to a few of the global CEOs, is that they themselves have gone through strikes and mass actions and that have even turned violent and where people have been injured. And I think what we are doing is, of course, to try and learn lessons from them around improved communication, how do we alert without alarming. But the biggest challenge of what we're trying to do is to reassure the trade in that market that we still remain a safe destination. This is an incident that has unfortunately occurred, but we do have other mechanisms in place to provide safety for events, etc., and for tourists. And there's a program we've been running for the last 10, 13 years as Cape Town Tourism called TravelWise and the Band-Aid program, where we actually are both proactive in informing people and keeping them updated of any challenges around safety, And then we also have a Band-Aid program that activates in the event a tourist is in distress or injured or a victim of a crime, where we make sure that we look after them as an industry and also with the help of local government. So we always take a caring approach to these things, and we've demonstrated that over the last 30 years since World Cup. And I think it's through our actions that speaks to trade globally, because again, like I said, this is not the first challenge we are facing as a destination.
You know, last year, I think it was October last year, there was a German tourist travelling also with family and friends very close to one of the Kruger gates. He took a wrong turn, ended up in an area, there was a shootout, and he died. It seems to me possibly it's when tourists are on the move that they're at their most vulnerable, because when you're driving yourself in an area you don't know, it's so easy to take a wrong turn, and a wrong turn can be deathly in South Africa, where we have pockets that are just simply very unsafe, particularly if you don't know where you're going and you don't know what you're doing and you can't perhaps speak the local language. Do you think there needs to be specific safety intervention around our roads, that maybe an even stronger warning perhaps to international tourists not to self-drive?
Sally, I don't think we need to be as drastic to avoid self-drive, because I think if you look at it on the whole, a lot of South Africans self-drive, a lot of tourists still self-drive, those that become repeat visitors. I think at the end of the day is crime is opportunistic. Unfortunately, no matter whether you are a tourist or a citizen, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, these things could happen. I think at the end of the day, one of the most important things that we need to remind people is that a lot of people within the communities that we're trying to, of course, make sure that tourism also benefits and goes into those communities are generally good people. I mean, that's the South African hospitality that we are aware of and we will continue to drive. There will always be criminals who are going to look at easy pickings, whether it's a tourist or a citizen. What we need to do is to work with communities like Cape Town Tourism has been doing for the last few years in identifying where the challenges are, making sure we can find employment for youth in tourism. Because one of the things that we also discovered, because we monitored incidents against tourists on a monthly basis, and in our own analysis, what we've identified is that it's unemployed youth who are the ones that are perpetrating most of the crimes. And when we look at the level of unemployment, as well as the fact that tourism is probably the best vehicle to get these youth into as employment opportunities, we feel that, this is a problem we all need to solve. If we can't solve the unemployment and the youth issue, and if tourism can't play its active role in driving that, this thing will continue. And the last thing we want is to get to a point of where there is significant social unrest and nobody wins in that case. So as Cape Town Tourism, we will continue to work with communities through our ICASI programs, work especially with youth in schools through our Future Leaders in Tourism program, and also work with teachers in communities, like we've got a tourism teachers think tank, where we also make sure that, the industry works quite closely with communities, because that's where tourism beneficiation needs to happen. It needs to be directly in those communities. And what we found from tourists is tourists want to hang out where the locals hang out. And that's critically important as part of our USP as Cape Town.
Yeah, it's such an important initiative. And you spoke about the many good people in South Africa. And I was reading one of the reports about what happened to this poor doctor and his family. He was driving a car, I think, with his wife and little boy of 2 years old when he was shot. And of course, she was absolutely beside herself. But it was a local community leader who came forward and completely looked after, made sure she was taken and kept safe. And that's just a sign that, for every person who does something reckless and wrong, there are 10, 20, 30 good South Africans who just don't want to see this happen. I want to ask you about someone perhaps travelling down to Cape Town tomorrow. Let's say they've booked a special weekend. They're going to stay at a lovely hotel. We are seeing all this footage of supermarket shelves being empty, and we know that it's because a lot of the trucks have been a little bit cautious about travelling because of the attacks. Talk to me about the state of play in your hotels, in your guest houses. I mean, are you battling to make up these gourmet meals that people love to come and have, for example? How difficult is it if your chef is stuck out of the town and you can't get him in or her in?
So, Sally, absolutely. One of the biggest challenges we have been facing is, of course, getting hospitality, travel and tourism employees to attend work and, of course, offer those amazing meals, amazing service to our guests. And what we have found is, like I said earlier on, is that a lot of hotels have and operators and attractions have put their staff into hotels to make sure that they are available, but they're also taken care of. And my advice to anybody traveling down to Cape Town is that it's still safe. However, what I always inform people is just, listen to the news, watch out, follow our website and our online channels where we give up-to-date information around areas of concern, but also speak to your tour operator, your hotel, because they are also on the ground. And there are routes, and I mean, Cape Town is open. People are moving freely. Yes, there are flare-ups here and there. But I think at the end of the day, no matter what it is, the one thing we are asking for as the tourism industry is for this impasse between, the Satako and the city and the province, to be resolved as quickly as possible so that we can restart our economies, bring back the jobs, bring back the livelihoods and the hope that we all want for Cape Town and South Africa.
Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Enver Duminy, Head of Cape Town Tourism.